So I'm starting the recording now. It's June 7th. This is the OWASP board meeting from June 7th. By participating in the call, you're acknowledging that you're accepting being recorded as part of the public meeting. And it looks to me like Andrew Vanderstock is here. Josh Sokol is here. Martin Knobloch is here. Michael Coates is here. Tobias Gondrum is here. And I heard Tom Brennan. So that, I believe, is everyone. Am I wrong? That's great. In addition, we have Bev Corwin, Claudia, Dawn, Kate, Kevin, Green, I'm assuming, Matt Tesaro, Sean Orty, and Tom Pappas from finance.
Yep.
Great. So let's go ahead and get started. I hope that everybody had a chance to look at the agenda and make their updates. I guess the first question is about prior meeting minutes. Normally we would want to start and approve those. Are we well situated to do that? I know that last month we had some sort of cleanup and stuff to go on. Should we spend time on this right now?
Yes, we should. Click on the link.
Awesome.
And thanks to the staff, whoever worked on it. I think it may have been Dawn, but those are the meeting minutes broken down, and I think they're well done. So thanks to the team for taking care of that.
Great. It looks like almost everybody is in them. That's great. Do we have, should we go meeting by meeting to approve them, or should we approve them all? Have people had a chance to look at them?
So we have the past meetings as well. I'm only seeing the one that's linked. Prior meeting minutes.
Yeah, the request last time, we had been putting them on the meeting on which they were recorded, and the request last time was to put them on the next meeting, so we have a pointer back one meeting in terms of minutes.
Gotcha. Okay.
We can change that if you guys want to do something different, but that was the ask, and that's what Dawn did.
Yeah, the only reason why I was asking is if we have to vote on multiple in one meeting, we should have them listed as in terms of what we're voting on. So which months are we looking at for approval?
Well, right now this is for the last month's meeting.
Okay, so I'll motion to approve the meeting minutes from May 9th, 2017.
I second the motion, but I'd like to go right to discussion. If you guys look at the items that are there, just to call out the first one, the OWASP Summit request for $85,000, right? There was a motion to approve it, and then no one seconded it. And then, of course, we continued on. And then I believe that there was then a vote that then took place via email. So, again, that's why, for me, at least, keeping things tracked as a quorum at a board meeting, I think is useful. Email stuff, of course, sometimes gets lost or misplaced. But I believe this now, at least the Summit request item has now been approved. And I think it was now approved not for $85,000, but I think it was approved for $100,000. Was that true, Andrew? What was the number?
I would have to go back over the notes to figure this one out, but it was certainly approving. I think it was 150 actually. It was just simply saying that the amount that we set aside, they could use all of that and then see what they could return.
So Matt, just as we move forward, there's an example of like a motion was made at the last meeting, it wasn't seconded, it didn't get approved, and then we made another motion. Like it's sometimes the meetings really need to be used for that purpose.
Yeah, I see what you mean. We didn't close the loop here. So should we just recap that? I think we all voted in favor of that updated request, right? So should we let the record show that I mean, we don't need to vote again, right? Because we voted electronically, but the record can show that we supported the EU Project Summit.
I believe so.
Well, as long as the list of board votes was updated, then we should be fine. Yeah, the May 15 shows the board vote that was proposed and voted in favor.
Yep. Great.
So we should be good. The record reflects it.
Yep. I think it's a good. I don't think it's a bad thing, especially with something as major as that. To recap it. Excellent. So, so we've approved. Well, we actually didn't approve. We had a second in discussion on this, which I think is May 9th, right? That's March. On the.
And then the very last one is the revisit of the summit, which, just more for the record and for people that are joining the call to know, we try real hard to make sure the stuff is correct, but it is what it is. All right, yeah. So it was motion. I made a second to the motion to approve it. Any other discussion?
Anyone opposed to approving the minutes as written? Great.
In the minutes.
Great. Thanks for that. We do have reports. I've looked at this. I looked at it based on an email link, not this one here, but the financial package. I don't know. Does it make sense to talk about this? Is the board interested in hearing about this now, or have we looked at the report and we're good? In other words, should I ask Tom Pappas to summarize the current state of the finances, or are we clear based on the reports?
So
bring the reports up for the recording, and then we can acknowledge them and move on.
The only thing that I would ask is if there's any concerns from Andrew or Tom.
So this is Tom Pappas. Other than the chapter balances continue to remain large. You can see in the budgets in the summary that we're ahead of budget, both on a net income basis. We're lower in expenses, and so
okay.
Through April, there isn't anything that that I didn't put in my narrative.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, looks okay so far. I was a little bit surprised how much money we handle through the European entity. That was interesting to see in your package.
Yeah, well, don't forget the AppSec EU goes through there, and I mean everything that I report on is on a combined basis, but
it's fine. It's fine. It was just noteworthy. So please continue.
No worries, Tobias. Yep.
A quick comment on the EU side, right? So, and Martin, welcome to the crew. So, was there actually a AppSec? Excuse me. Was there actually a EU entity annual meeting? And if so, did that happen at AppSec EU? Because we do have a legal entity in the EU that needs to meet once a year, and there are some authors of that. So, I'm just wondering if that meeting took place at the AppSec EU conference.
No, it did not. It did not. And I believe normally we have this at the end of the calendar year, but I may be wrong. So we can look into this. Thank you for noting it.
Yeah.
I can take this as an action item to see with Martin, as I believe we are the officers.
I'm not aware of.
Okay.
So who are the officers, Tobias, of the OWASP EU entity as of today?
As of today, I need to come back to you because there were some changes and I need to check what were the updates. But I am one of the officers that I can confirm.
I think
Martin.
Well, but I don't know the exhaustive list.
Yeah. So I need to go back to. I need to come back to you via email to confirm.
Okay, and then Matt Kondo, we also have another entity, right? There's 3 entities. The other entity as well. We should probably make sure that's been reviewed and updated as well, only because we do have 3 legal OWASP entities. There is not just one. So getting them all in sync is probably important.
I definitely agree. Can I guess Matt, Tesaro, and Tom, can you take that as an action to figure out? Because I don't think I know that we've had updates on the third one, and I'm not even sure what it is. So can you plan to present that back maybe in July, just so that we don't spend a lot of time talking about it now?
Tom Brennan, can we connect on this? Because you mentioned it before, but it's not in any of the books and records. It was not part of the 2013 audit. We don't track anything. I believe you said it's in Norway, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, so click on the link that's in chat. It's been on the website for many, many years, and this is one of those things I think we just drop the ball on all the time, right? So if it's on the wiki page, people are calling us to be responsible for it, and there it is. So let's figure out who the officers are. Let's list their names. Let's if there are minutes or meetings or things that we should go ahead and track, then it's important. And of course, like an AppSec EU event, it would be important for the OWASP Europe VZW event to be represented there, right? So that way we can have representation part of that. It was just upsetting, I think, for people not to know who's responsible for the EU organization.
So
actually,
I'll work with.
Martin just dropped a link into the chat with the link to the Europe board. So that's public.
Yeah, that was me.
Oh, thank you. Then that was you already. So, answer.
So I'll contact Kate and work with Matt Tesaro. But again, as I said, when we took this on 3+ years ago, there's nothing in the records that we have that says anything about Norway. So we're going to have to go back and find out if we are actually an entity in Norway and figure out what we need to do with it.
There might be something like a supporting entity, so it's not an OWASP entity, but an OWASP supporting community. Something that happens sometimes in Europe. So it's detached from the organization they support.
So I think I don't want to cut us off here, but I think that Tom Pappas, the page that we're showing here that Martin shared shows the board members for the EU entity. And I think the page that Tom Brennan pointed us to gives us at least a little bit of a start as far as tracking down that Norway chapter. Let's do that and figure out whether that's a formal thing or whether it's just a chapter with an entity. I'm not exactly clear on what that is. But I definitely think I agree with Brennan that we should know if it is.
Agreed.
Yeah, because this also was raised by the chapters during both chapter leader sessions, both at AppSec EU this year as well as at the AppSec USA last year, about chapters creating their local incorporations or their local entities. So if we just need to readdress this, we should be clear. I think our spirit, spirit of our policy is that we are one OWASP organization based out of the U.S. worldwide, and we don't encourage chapters to create their own legal entities. But again, there is precedent here. We need to be clear to our leaders what we are allowing.
Got it. Thanks, Tom.
I don't know. I'm just wondering for the different countries and regulations, because I'm actually allowed in Europe to make an over supporting or whatever. I can make Adidas supporting organization that only has to support the organization I'm supporting. So I don't know if you can disallow this on the legal, so we have to disencourage it.
Well, we can, because this goes back to the trademark of the name, and I think early on when we first engaged our community manager, this was a conversation that we were having around trademark and brand, and there was a conversation around that. Again, it's not critical, nothing's on fire. It's just a matter of making sure we address it both financially and legally, because we are a U.S.-based nonprofit, just to be clear.
Great. Tom, if it's okay, I'd like to move to the old business that's here.
Sure, go.
Great. Josh, would you like to talk about, and please bear in mind, this is we want to be sensitive to what we talk about and don't talk about, and just make sure we want to be open, but we don't want to share details about things that
Yeah, not a problem. So we are looking at hiring an OWASP executive director. I've kind of taken over this from Johanna. I just posted to the chat a link to the executive director search timeline. I'm already behind the ball on that, but that was kind of expected because it's a very aggressive schedule. But I think that we can make up time and whatnot pretty quickly. The main reason why I say that we're a little bit behind the ball is because I posted kind of a reworking of the OWASP executive director job description, which I will share here. That's this guy. That executive director job description, we had some feedback in the comments, mostly minor stuff in the comments. And then I had Kate respond back with a, here's what I'd like to see in this job description. She said, basically, overall, it looks much better than the previous iterations. But there were some things in terms of emphasis that she thought that we should change. So I need to slightly rework that to hopefully incorporate some of that feedback. But this is kind of the new updated job description. I think that it's more of a less of a directorate and more of a kinder and gentler OWASP, hopefully more attractive to somebody who would be interested in joining the OWASP Foundation. Outlines different areas of what skills we're looking for, what kind of responsibilities will somebody have. And part of the feedback was to kind of rebrand that tasks and responsibilities piece. So I will work on that. I also have, let me see here, put one last link in the chat. I have this, which is a spreadsheet of anybody who is interested in helping with this process. I've had a couple people who are interested in, quite a few people who are interested in participating. One person specifically said that they were interested in helping to review resumes. The rest seem to be kind of general, willing to help wherever kind of thing.
I'm doing okay. How are you?
Sorry, I'm on a voice call, but I just did the financial presentation.
Okay,
so
let's mute Tom.
So we're also going through some hurricanes here, so I totally understand that. We're kind of caught in a tough situation trying.
Hello.
Thank you.
Sorry.
All right, so we muted Tom Pappas. Thank you. So on this executive director committee spreadsheet, if anybody is interested in participating, please go ahead, add your name to it. It should be open to anybody with an OWASP.org email address to be able to add. I see Bev adding her name right now. But this is basically how we're going to track who's going to participate in this. And so the process will basically from here, we need to finalize that job description. We need to go ahead and get that published out. And then the goal is to basically start hammering the community and saying, hey, please promote this job description. Please reach out to your contacts. And then I'm also talking with a third party who may help with some of the recruitment stuff as well. Obviously, that would cost money, but we're trying to figure that out. One note here, if you are interested in the job, please don't put your name on the spreadsheet. Obviously, that would introduce bias. We don't want any bias in this. But as long as you're not interested in becoming the OWASP executive director, please go ahead and put your name on there. We would love to have you participate. So I think that's basically it, where the executive director piece comes. I would hope to have a job posting up there late this week, if not early next week. I just have to get in and kind of revise that that job posting a little bit. So, or the job description rather. Questions, comments on the process? I'm trying to do it in a fairly streamlined fashion, but still make sure all the bases are covered. If I missed anything, please let me know.
Josh, you have additional updates on that relative to the executive session, which follows this, correct?
I'm not sure that there's really any additional updates that can't be handled via the normal board call, which is why I said I don't think that there's anything sensitive in nature right now.
So then do you have a timeline or a date that you're trying to finalize this by so we can actually get an opening?
Yeah,
some people have applied and some of them are even on the call.
Yep.
I'm just wondering
so,
if we're going to push forward.
All of that is in the OWASP Executive Director Search Timeline document that I posted on there. The items that are in green are the items that have been completed. So as part of this, I went and I notified all the candidates that we were not interested in pursuing, basically ones who got no votes, that, hey, thanks for applying, but we won't be pursuing this further. And then there were 2 candidates in there who we had positive feedback on. And with those candidates, I basically notified, hey, we may be interested in pursuing this further. And basically what will happen is once this job description is official, in Recruiter Box, I can migrate those profiles over to the new candidacy so that they can be reviewed and whatnot. And then we'll go from there. So basically there's 2 of everybody who have applied who are potential candidates, but the goal here is to try and reach out and get even more to kind of jump in here.
So just for process, I don't see it on this doc. Does it have a supermajority vote of the then sitting board members to hire somebody, or what's the process for the final selection?
So that Friday, June 16th is about as close as I got to that. Basically what I said is candidates with all positive reviews by the board would be moved forward to the interview stage with the committee. And so this is that group that's on that spreadsheet that I posted as well. If you're interested, basically it would be kind of a communal interview thing. I do envision there being a board interview with people prior to that point, if they're positive, and then the committee would basically be comprised of community staff and potentially board members if they want to sit on that call. And so hopefully the final decision would be made in that joint committee with the group of interested people.
So for clarification then, are you saying that the committee is making the hiring decision, or is the board making a decision based on voting for the executive director?
So my plan with this is for the committee to make the decision. I think that the board will be the kind of filter on this. So we have the resumes that are coming in via Recruiter Box, and everybody can basically review the resumes, everybody being the board members, review the resumes and say, yes, this is a yes, this is a no, whatever. The people from there will be given some interviews with board members, as board members can do it. And then if there are people who pass that test who are positives, I think that goes to the community, which can be board, it can be staff, and it can be all our leaders and whatnot. So I think that the choice for executive director is a community decision. I think the board is basically a filter on that decision.
Actually, my understanding would be the other way around, because, forgive me, we have a legal obligation as the board to, this is a legal decision to hire somebody. So if the foundation signs a contract with someone, in the end, the board carries that responsibility. Of course, the selection can be proposed by this committee, but in the end, the board needs to approve this decision because it's a legal decision.
I would lean along those lines too, of having the community and the committee group provide the recommendation and feedback, but the board make the final decision with required vote from all board members. And to Tom's point, I don't know if that's a majority or supermajority, but that's where I would lean as well.
Okay. All right. Well, fair criticism. I'll go ahead and reorder the search timeline to include that.
So perhaps we should just spend another minute on that for clarity. I don't know, Martin, do you have an opinion that way at least we can voice it relative to this one? Because I think this needs to get decided on sooner than later, guys, because the last process we did when we hired other staff members was the board was actually making the decision. So we're going to follow the same process. Fantastic. If we're not, that's fine. But there needs to be clarity here. Otherwise, the community and the people reading this document aren't clear. So for the board meeting, maybe it's appropriate to clarify that real quick.
Yep. So Friday, June 30th, all interviews completed, final candidate selected by the board, and offer made.
So a supermajority is required for that, or just a majority?
I mean, all board votes are majority votes, so I don't know where supermajority would come in.
It would come in with having all 7 board members that are elected by the membership being in agreement to extend an offer to the candidate.
So I don't necessarily know that the board can agree 100% on a lot of topics. I would hesitate to say that for the executive director. But we can certainly.
Our bylaws do not foresee that there is a higher majority required for a board to take action on this hire, so I don't think we need.
Okay. So the bylaws dictate then, moving forward.
Yep.
So the last thing about this, I think it is important to call out the important role of this committee, which is providing, and maybe we should get this written down somewhere, Josh, or maybe you have it, but providing a recommendation on one or more candidates. I mean, I think I would love as the board for us to get their feedback from the community officially to know what that is as a point of consideration, a very important point of consideration.
Yes, I agree. And I mean, I'm actually quite willing to follow that recommendation of that committee. That's the whole purpose.
Yeah.
Again, I know it's T's and C's, but it helps us later on in life. Do we need to make sure the committee members that have self-signed up are members of the organization, or does it not make a difference? Can they have can they be a service provider? Do we care about any of that stuff?
I mean, I guess I would say not really. If there's somebody who's obviously abusing the system, then I think we need to, I guess, halt that. But I think we go in with the best intentions and go from there, especially with having this switch where the board is the final selection. I don't think they'll affect it.
The only consideration there is if we consider the community action as a vote, which I guess is up to debate, that would require them to be members. But otherwise, I think it's fully at our disposal.
Martin, do you have anything to add here? Just noticed that we haven't heard it from you.
Yeah, I concur with Tobias mostly. So, yeah.
Okay, Andrew?
I agree with Tobias. Essentially, this is the ED role, and they take our wishes and then work with the staff to make those happen. So I think out of all the roles that we vote on, this is the most important one we do. At the end of the day, basically, if you look at it from a point of view of, say, 20 years in the future, where OWASP might have 100 staff or something, let's hope we get there. We wouldn't be approving every single staff hire, but certainly even that point, we would still want, as a board, to approve the ED or a CEO type role, because they take our wishes and then turn that into action. And so from that point of view, I would definitely say that I would look for a strong recommendation from the community, but it's still our role to decide on that and approve it.
So I guess the important thing is, and Tom, thanks for driving this a little bit, are we comfortable with the text that Josh has outlined here for the 16th and the 30th as far as the sort of filtering stages? Does anybody object to it the way it's written now?
I just wonder, is one of the board members, or Tom, will monitor or, how to say it, not supervise, but be part of the committee meetings?
My intent is for me to be a part of the committee meetings, yes. And it looks like a couple others add their names as well. So looks like we have Michael on the list as well.
I think that's good.
Great.
If you want me to be involved in any interviews, it's going to be tricky up until the 21st. After the 21st, I'm in San Francisco, so it'll be a lot easier at that point.
Okay. Noted.
Thanks, Andrew. Anybody have questions about the ED update? Maybe we can move to the bylaws, Josh. I think we did not finish that email chain, so maybe we can recap what this is.
Correct. So there's a link on there if you'll go ahead and open that up. Yeah. So basically, in the last OWASP meeting, last board meeting, we had voted on basically how long the directors are in office and how basically a rule that says you can't have more than 2 terms in a 10-year period. That was voted and approved. However, Matt Tesoro brought up to me that there's actually 2 sections that read that. So this was basically cleanup to make sure that we have the same language across both of those sections. So basically the motion here is to revise that section 3.02 so that basically says the number of directors of the foundation shall be no less than 5, no more than 7. That's already in there. Each director shall hold office for 2 years unless duly removed. And then the piece that's added is an individual is limited to no more than 2 terms in any 10-year period. So that's the new text there that jives with motion, the motion that I had previously for section 2.02. And so really this is just a motion to update that language in that section so that it matches section 2.02. Questions?
I second that motion.
Thank you, Tobias. Any discussion?
So quick discussion. So in chat is a link to the follow-up email that was sent relative to the board list. I do want to get on the record and call out that I think it's very important for us not only to document that, which is a correction, but also in the spirit of making sure there's transparency to ensure that we actually outline the process of board members when they are elected by the membership and then they join, how that process then becomes a role, meaning how they become a chair or vice chair or treasurer or secretary or board member at large. It's not documented, it's not in the bylaws, and it's not clear. So it's something that we should maybe add as a second item, but my note here was a friendly amendment to also add that since we are being very, very explicit here, we should probably be transparent as well.
That said, on the OWASP board meetings page is still Johanna as vice chair.
That's because it hasn't been updated by anyone. But my point is, Martin, as an example, is that when the next election happens, which is going to start right away, right? When people are voted into the organization, there's no transparency, such as how does somebody become the chair? How does somebody become the treasurer? What we know, because we've been doing this for 10 years, but I can say that it's pretty much drawing straws and having people vote within the board, which is fine, that works. But I just think we need to document it so that people understand that Martin Knobloch, that is now on the board, is going to be is going to be a member at large, right? Because we're not going to reshuffle the deck until January 1st, because it's a 12-month term.
Yeah, I think in general, for the most people who are putting themselves up for election for board member, it's not clear what it means to become a board member.
Exactly. That's one of my points.
Yeah. I conclude that.
Good. So then, but we need some constructive text to be added.
Yeah, and that was my concern with the feedback as well, is that with no text being provided in terms of what that change would be, I'm not sure that it's something votable at this time. So I stand by my original motion. I think that, Tom, if you'd like to create the text to make that change, I'm more than happy to vote for it for that clarification. But it's not really part of this motion. This is just a cleanup effort for something that's already been voted in favor of.
Yeah, let's keep it separate.
So we have a motion, second. We've had some discussion. Further thoughts, or can we vote on this?
Let's vote.
Let's vote. Andrew?
Yes.
Tom?
Yes. We've already voted for this, but yes.
Yes.
Martin?
Yes.
Michael? Tobias?
Yes.
And I'm also yes. Thank you.
Real quick, has Martin completed his training materials and signed the whatever the thing is that the board members sign?
I have not received anything to sign. I received 2 books I'm currently reading.
Okay, so I think that we should count Martin as a shadow vote for now, until the board member onboarding materials is completed. Any issues with that?
So I would disagree. I would think that it's unfortunate that our operations hasn't been able to DocuSign and send Martin an email to DocuSign and click through. But I don't know that that should hold them up from having a vote on this or any other topic at this point.
I agree. You should have a full vote.
So,
Okay.
I think it might be specifically called in our bylaws that you don't. I mean, we can double check that, but I think it might be written that way.
yeah, and I also, just to kind of say this out loud before we put any of the blame on operations, I believe that Martin has to finish the books before he signs the document.
That's correct. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, the signature is I've read the book, so in theory he should finish reading them before he signs, or in practice as well.
But guys, let's be realistic. From practice, in the past, people started their activity as board members in January 1st, and they started having voting rights from that point onwards.
We knew the results of the election back in like October or November, and they had 2 months or whatever before the first board meeting to do that.
Okay, that's true. I'm sorry, you're right. Yes.
The motion still carries in this instance.
Yeah, this doesn't affect the motion at all. I just want to make sure that we have all our T's crossed and I's dotted.
Right.
Anyway.
So Martin,
DocuSign
go ahead, Andrew. Sorry.
Yeah, if Martin can be given the DocuSign details soon, that'd be awesome.
Kate just put a note in chat that says DocuSign agreement states. But the question I guess I have is, has the DocuSign request been sent to Martin?
I believe historically, and Kate can correct us if I'm wrong, but I believe historically we've waited till them to say, okay, I'm done reading. Because otherwise you're asking them to sign something that you haven't even read yet. It does seem like it should sort of follow an order.
Yeah, Matt's exactly right. So that document that you're speaking to, the DocuSign agreement, is the orientation wrap-up document, which states that all of the materials have been read and that the individual is good to go. So that document wouldn't be. I have it, and I'm waiting for Martin to tell me that the books are read and all of the other required reading has been completed before I send that to him.
So
you could send it to him and he can sign it the moment he is done.
Could do that, sure.
So welcome to the board, Martin. We're going to stand on formality. Let's make sure we just kind of tie this up so that we can pull you in fully to the future votes and all that.
Okay.
But I don't necessarily think that we should spend more time on that.
Okay, so Matt, real quick, conclusion is he is not an officially voting board member. He is shadow vote until that's complete, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that's consistent with what we've done in the past.
Absolutely no disrespect meant, Martin. I just wanted to make sure we were all on the same page.
Okay, good.
So we have budget requests from Sean Ority as the next section of new business.
Realistically, there's a lot to discuss here. So do you want to do the strategic training goal first, because it looks like something that can be dealt with, and then we'll come back to the budget requests?
Well, I would love to do that, but I think Sean is on the phone and was also on the phone last meeting, and so if we can actually make progress on some of the items he's raised, I would love to do that.
Okay.
Sorry, Andrew. I don't mean to.
Let me just take it on then. I'll get Sean to speak to the items. I sent him around an email to the board just before this meeting. My brain is very fuzzy. It's 2:45 in the morning here, so I might let Sean talk to the actual items. But typically, if it's around grants or grant writing, I'm saying put that off until after the ED has been hired. There needs to be a grant writing strategy put in place. And that can't occur until after the ED's had a chance to look at the structure of the staff and making sure that we're actually doing the right thing. I have put forward, I think, 4 or 5 things that we can move forward with. Essentially, the BLT development marketing, I've asked him to take that on as a more of a generic process for more projects, and we need to actually get a marketing strategy into place so we understand if marketing funds are being put into a project, that we understand how that was spent, measuring the reach and whatnot. And we just don't have that capability right now. So that one's probably a little bit more work, but we can probably get that one done. The project Kickstart, the only problem I see with that is that Coda Bounty is owned by Sean, and I would just simply, the same problems we have with Bugcrowd versus HackerOne, we just need to be a bit more transparent with that. I think we can get that across the line because it's actually quite a good idea. Just the way it's executed, I think, needs to be fleshed a little bit. The Innovation Lab is more or less the headquarters for OWASP, and at the moment I think that is more than 10% of our discretionary funds in a year, so we're not going to do that. The grant engine, don't worry about it. Hackathon, I've asked him to work with Dennis and Claudia to come up with a way to have a repeatable hackathon that's attached to project work, project summits and whatnot. I think there's a lot of overlap here with project summits, and I think it's a good idea. It should probably happen, but because it is so close in nature to what's, we've already done around $200,000 worth of projects, summits this year alone. We're probably not going to fund that this year, but it's certainly something to be looking forward for FY18. And I would certainly suggest that planning should be done this year in preparation for a proper proposal for next year. The membership drive, I think we need to do this globally and work with Kelly and others who are doing membership drives. It'd be really good not to just concentrate on a single chapter, but globally. We need to start getting beyond 2,000 paid members. We've been around that number for a number of years. We need to really move that needle. Doing it within one chapter is probably, we're not really taking it to the next level. It'd be really nice to be able to do something a bit wider. And I'm fully supportive of a membership drive and putting some funds into it to make it happen. Just let's do it globally. Mentoring, I think that hooks onto the global, the Google Summer of Code stuff that we've been doing. If we can work out a program here again, I think a bit more work on the proposal, I think we can get this one across the line. Doing something a bit formal and putting together a budget so that we're actually getting out there and hooking up people in places that are a bit out of the road with folks who've already got a well-established career. That's something that's amazing. Google Summer of Code's been amazing for the people who've participated in it. OWASP would do well to have a program like that. So I'm sure there's already something happening in this area. It would be good to get those people together and coming up with a proposal that we can fund year on year. The last one that I think we can do something with is the Asia Pacific tour using LATAM as a model. I'm perfectly fine with this concept and the funds that have been asked for. It's just simply I want to make sure that the people who are running those conferences in those regions today, like in OWASP China, in OWASP Japan, in the Philippines, Malaysia, OWASP Melbourne. OWASP Melbourne is looking to get Troy Hunt on board and doing some training with him. These are the sorts of things that I think, if we could have a LATAM style approach where it's all in the 1 or 2 weeks, that would actually make it a lot easier on our staff to support that regional event structure. But it also means that we get a lot of inter-regional communications going, and I think that would be really good as well. So I'm very positive towards this. It's just, again, I think it needs a little bit more work, and I think we can get it across the line. It's probably not something we can vote on today. Look, it is very, very late here. I might hand you off to Sean to discuss the specifics of those that I think we could get something happening. But I'm sort of done.
If I may add one comment, at least for the Asia tour. So as I've done this in the past, you need a strong volunteer team working towards organizing this. Otherwise, this is extremely difficult. You cannot utilize the money if you don't have a strong organizing team. And like we've seen this with the Latin tour, like this only works if you have someone really pushing it and traveling that place. So
thanks for summarizing, Andrew. And that's good feedback. I guess my goal would be to figure out if any of these are things we should take action on today, and if they are, to have the discussion we need to do that. So, is there one out of this list that we should pick to talk about in more detail?
I think, honestly, the hackathon is one of those ones where I think you could probably get quite far along the path. And if that one is something maybe you might want to delegate off to Claudia to take on board. The other one that is definitely doable, and thinking, if you've got Sean here and you can discuss it with him, is the Project Kickstart. My concern with that one is that he owns Coder Bounty, but something that would actually allow us to, drive volunteerism in our projects, particularly in the labs and incubators, would be fantastic if we could figure out a way forward there and get past that issue of how do we actually reward people and how much money do we put up. I think that's something that could probably get across the line as well. But out of the two, I think we're already doing something like Hackathon. The Project Kickstart might be a good way of kickstarting some of those projects that are a bit stalled, but are very interesting. I don't know.
Andrew, this is Matt Pissarro. One thing quick. A similar case had come in on using I forget what he called the Project Kickstart in this case, using Coder Bounty. And what I told Sean at that time was, I'm happy doing an RFP like we did for the bug bounty system that we're using for projects. And if it's an open RFP and if Coder Bounty wants to submit to that open RFP, I don't see a problem. That way we give any vendor an opportunity to say they want to or don't want to play in that space.
Mm-hmm. And it seems like exactly my thinking of.
So sorry? If there is a conflict of interest, then I have some concerns. Like if someone is proposing something that will eventually put money into his pocket, I think that's a little bit, that requires some additional observation.
So maybe we can invite Sean to speak for a moment, if you have a moment, Sean. Just to kind of frame this, from my perspective, we have a lot of proposals here from you, which are great. It's all good thinking. It's all like things that I want to consider. I think it's overwhelming for us because we can't do all of it, of course. So we heard from Andrew about where he thinks, I think the hackathon, which is this one, and the Kickstart is. Can you talk about what you think would be the one that you would sort of advance if you could pick one, or I honestly, if we could pick one or two and go deeper. It sounds like the Kickstart, there's a subsequent activity to go make that potentially RFPable, and I would ask us to take that discussion offline as far as Andrew and Sean to talk about how that would work. Maybe Sean can even help write the RFP, but as long as it goes out publicly, that's okay. I don't know. But let's not, since we can't decide on that, let's not talk about that now. But Sean, what would you want to say here about this? Because this is such good energy. I just can't, it's just almost too much to digest.
Yeah, so if I were to pick two, I would agree with Andrew that the Kickstart is a good one, and the Mentor Initiative as well, because that aligns with the goals of OWASP. To touch on the point of the potential conflict of interest, yes, I'm the incorporator from Coder Bounty. However, I do not take a salary from Coder Bounty. It's a separate legal entity, and Coder Bounty takes a 10% commission from the bounties, and that goes to Coder Bounty, not me. And for the Mentor Initiative, we've already kind of linked this to the Learning Gateway. We have code in place. We have mentors that are learning from each other, and this would be a great way to move it forward. So this is already in motion with Bev and a bunch of people. This is a global initiative too, so there's people around the world that are part of this mentor initiative, and it would be great to have some funding to build out our system and our initiatives more.
So this is Tom. I just want to highlight here, you guys can see from the forms that were all filled out back in January, you know, Sean and Beverly and a lot of other folks are very active in the New York City metro area. You know, all of these different opportunities, are being asked for budget approval. That was the initial request or the call for information. And then again, if the board wants to look at these approximate $450,000 in requests and pick a few, fantastic. But I also do want to encourage Sean and others on the call that, you know, even if the board doesn't particularly endorse or fund a particular initiative, there's really no reason why they can't ask chapters or other projects to kick in money as well. As an example, we have certain chapters that, you know, have a good balance. Perhaps they want to help run one of these initiatives if the foundation won't support it. So kudos to Sean and team, but you know, he put a lot of work into this.
Thank you.
Good point, Tom. Good point.
So out of the $450,000, again, you know, we invested approximately $150,000 over email a week or two ago for an OWASP summit. You know, I would look quickly at our current balance in our accounts. I would look at what we really haven't spent on anything this year. It's already, you know, June 7th, and I would try to see if any of these activities are in line with the strategic goals of the foundation. And as everyone knows, we only have one strategic goal this year, which is on the website, which is training. And, you know, in training, of course, does also have a conflict of interest with many people that are on the board that deliver training. So I think what needs to happen here is look at some of the ones that were asked and figure out what budget we have available and see how we can help an active community member drive one of his initiatives, if not more than one, forward. I just think that that's what we should be focused on here and helping empower some of these initiatives, since nobody else in the entire global community submitted any requests for budget.
This is Bev. I'd like to say something.
Go ahead, Bev.
Thank you. I put some notes in the chat, and I just want to speak in favor of the Mentor Initiative. We started that in New York about 3 years ago in the New York chapter, and it's grown. We have over 75 active participants in the Mentoring Initiative. We wanted to create a mentor committee. I would really encourage the board to support and push through us moving forward with that. We've been waiting for over a year. We've requested the creation of a mentor committee. And I think also the important thing to keep in mind is that the mentor committee and the mentor initiative is where the Learning Gateway project came from. It came from the people that were in the mentor initiative expressing what they wanted. So it is a direct response to the membership-driven request. It's the members that asked for that. So the Learning Gateway is designed around building a learning community, which includes training, traditional education, but it also includes learning in a more, I guess you would call it organizational, community building effort. So in that sense, the Learning Gateway and the Mentoring Initiative have helped build membership and have really helped to get a lot of good, positive information about OWASP out into the larger community. It brings in a lot of participants to the activities that we do here. And right now we have about 6 chapters participating. So we want to grow that and include any chapter that wants to be involved.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Bev, thank you. And whether it's you or Sean, maybe could you speak to how this applies globally? I know you maybe already did allude to it being not limited to the New York metro area, but can you just speak to that briefly about how this works?
I'll be happy to speak, and then Sean, I think it would be helpful too. Yeah, we originally the mentoring initiative came out of the WIA activities, the Women in AppSec. There's a lot of research that shows that women do better if they have a mentoring program. So we kind of started it out of WIA, and then we wanted to include everyone. We didn't want it to be just for women because there are lots of learning opportunities, and we wanted it to be everyone. So we pretty much announced it on the meetup sites, and we put it on the calendar, the OWASP calendar. We wanted to start a committee over a year ago, so we've been waiting very patiently for that. We had a lot of staff turnover, so we're kind of waiting for staff to get up to speed so that we can do that. And then once the committee launches, I think globally, we'll do a much better job of being able to reach out to the global community. But we did talk about it at the AppSec event, although we submitted proposals to be able to do mentoring activities, but they were not accepted at the DC event and others. We would like to be able to do mentoring activities at the events, and we had mentoring with the Women in AppSec event. So we were able to, with the women's, the WIA, I guess you would call it special activities. It wasn't really a track, it's sort of an add-on, but as part of the sort of semi-add-on, not really track activities that we had, we were able to incorporate mentoring into that. So in that sense, we've reached out globally very much so with the Women in AppSec committee.
Cool. Sean, when you speak to this, could you also maybe talk and I know it's in the proposal, but can you talk a little bit more about how the money would be used?
Sure thing. So I've sort of joined this initiative when it was a little bit more developed, and it was the mentor initiative. So I was like, I would love to mentor people and be mentored myself, and I have like 3 mentees now that I'm mentoring, and it's going so well. It's so rewarding to be able to talk with people and help them with their goals in life, and so I enjoy that a lot. And there are people on the list that are from all over the world, so it's global. And so the funding, I had done some development on kind of a goal tracking platform for the Mentor Initiative. So you can log in and say, okay, my mentee person X has these 5 goals, and then you can send them links and track their links and see if they're reading up on the information that you're seeing and see how far that they're getting towards their goals. So we have an MVP of this working. It's online, it's open source, it's through the Learning Gateway, and you can log in and put your goals. So that's working, and it took development time. So one of the budget requests would be for some development work. I think OWASP definitely needs some more marketing in general as a global organization, but for also projects, I think some of that could go to marketing, just a small amount. And then maybe we did get funding to go to an Exceed conference for Learning Gateways, and it was very beneficial for the people that went. And maybe if we could have some funding for a trip, that would be great too. So essentially, just development of this initiative and getting it across to people and making a working system that people all over the world can log into and use.
Got it. So I guess given all these proposals, I think, well, I sort of was hoping somebody else would do this, but I would propose that we fund this mentor initiative. It's digestible, as Tom Brennan alluded to. It's within reasonable sort of budget constraints. It's a step in a direction. It's not a huge amount of money. I think there are things about the proposal that could be clearer as far as where the money will specifically be spent. But I do think that there are great benefits to having people like Bev and Sean coming up with all these different ideas. And I believe that the mentor initiative is probably going to have good results. So I would like to support it. So I don't know, can we make a motion to fund this mentor initiative as a starting point? And I guess I will move to fund this mentor initiative.
So I have a question on the mentor initiative. Sean or Bev, whichever one of you guys want to answer. What is the metric, or how do we measure the success of the use of the OWASP funds for this? So we put $6,000 towards the initiative. How do we know that we're getting that return on investment?
I think that's a really good question.
Bev. I have a good answer. Answer you, Bev.
I think that's a really good question for all of your budget items, and I would love to work with you on defining metrics and timelines and deadlines. I think that's needed not just for the mentoring program, but for every single budget that the OWASP Foundation is backing at this point. It's something that I've mentioned a few times is missing from a lot of these proposals. So yeah, I'd be happy to work with you on that. Go ahead, Sean.
And yeah, I think metrics are great for measuring success. One of the metrics are the users. We have 75+ users, and the goal tracking system is a metric tracker itself. So you can say, my goal is to get a job. How close am I to that goal? And currently we have a system that you can see the percentage of how close you are to that goal. So what is already written and in code is a metric tracking system, essentially.
Michael?
I can add to that. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead, Bev.
I can add to, okay, thank you. I can add to that we do have some metrics in place. We've been working with the mentors and the mentees themselves to define some of those. It's an ongoing process. Noreen Weisel is leading the research, the user research for the development of the Gateway and the program. Her report is on the Learning Gateway project site so far. So we haven't yet begun design sprint or anything of that nature, but we are working regularly with the mentees and the mentors, defining some of those things. One of the things that we were able to define are, as Sean mentioned, the pathways, identifying successful pathways and learning pathways, and how to sort of, the progression through those. What we also were able to do with the Science Gateways Institute is to define a little bit more around, the learning community building model. So we've been working with them on that a little bit. So it's a new project. And the program the mentoring initiative is about 2 years old. The Learning Gateway is almost 1 year old. So we're just kind of getting started with it. I think defining metrics at this point is a good place to focus. I think timelines and deadlines are also useful. We do that internally a little bit, but making them public and attached to budgets, I very much support that.
So one of, I guess, my biggest questions is without metrics, it's hard to know what we intend to accomplish with this, and I don't see specific objectives attached to the funding. So, with most of the rest of the OWASP initiatives, at least there's a calculation involved with this budget number. It's because we got a quote to do something, or because we figured it would cost X dollars times X number of people to accomplish this goal. There's some way to achieve that number that gets stuck in the budget. and I'm not seeing that with this.
We have a couple milestones on our GitHub. So
Okay.
the development part of the budget ask would go for development and to hit our goals on GitHub.
Okay, so we're paying people to do the development?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Well, we also we'd have to build a budget and approve that with our committee members and then submit that to you for approval. I think that part of the budget would be for the people working on different parts, but also I think we want to be able to send committee members to events and things like that as well. So I think what makes sense is to put together a budget, have it approved by our committee, and then also see the Learning Gateway, the team leaders there, and then submit that for approval to, and include with that, deadlines and timelines and things like that, and then have the board approve it before we would ever spend any of that money.
This actually aligns a little bit with our training initiative, right? Because our training initiative has the similar goal and a similar metric.
Right. The training is part of the learning community building model. And the interesting thing about the Learning Gateway is it also generates revenue. It has multiple revenue streams, and we were working with the education committee when that started, but that sort of just disappeared. And so we integrated the education committee into the learning community building model. So it's there, and the training is included in that. But the gateway itself is architected to be able to be self-sustainable and to also generate revenue for the OWASP Foundation after a couple years. That's our goal.
Okay, so revenue from the gateway that we're building is considered foundation revenue?
Yeah, it would be OWASP Foundation fundraising revenue, or income, or however you want to classify it. But the idea is to make it a revenue generating activity. So we have a number of revenue streams identified in the model. And if you look at the Learning Gateway, it's all documented there, but we've looked at, having the trainings available, and then also partnering. We have a number of universities and also syndication, and just a lot of different possibilities there, partnering and things like that. So building a learning community around the gateway itself we do have a revenue generation model for that, and it's I think it's a good one because it's multiple revenue streams. So I think it's sustainable in that sense, but we're not finished developing it. So I'd say we're about a third of the way into being able to really give the big picture of what we want to do with it. But I think starting with focused efforts is better. So, for example, Kelly and I were able to work with a few organizations. One is the O'Reilly, organization. They're very interested in being a partner with the Gateway. There are others that are very interested that would make events and books and things available to OWASP members if they, if they participated or whatever. And so there's a co-marketing agreement in place for that, and any OWASP chapter is able to participate with that. And we wanted to make that through the Learning Gateway and do the same with other universities and other programs and training programs, and have that available, as well as the OWASP access to the OWASP content through the Gateway in a way that was a self-directed learning and collaborative learning model for the mentors and mentees to be able to work together through these pathways that Noreen is mapping out for us, identifying successful pathways and then also, making those available to people, and then helping people build successful pathways. That's one of the things that mentoring is really very good at. And then after the mentoring, if we can launch that, the goal is to build what are called sponsorships and sponsor programs, so that we can have partnerships with HR departments and recruiters and people like that, and anyone that is interested in an internal program where you have your proteges sponsored by individuals within an organization, and they have goals, and we can build partnerships with other organizations to do these protege sponsorship models. So that would be a second layer that we could add on top of the mentoring program. Say, I'm thinking year 3, we could start doing something like that.
Thanks,
and they're very successful as well in generating revenue and activities and things like that.
Thanks.
So quick question. We probably need to move this to a vote or table it. These proposals are on the website. This is something people had a chance to look at and review prior to the meeting. I just want to be aware that we were 15 minutes over on our time slot and we have other business to move to.
I have one question, if I may ask that. It's a simple yes or no. Is this an OWASP project at this moment?
Yes, it's the OWASP Learning Gateway project. So OLG we call it, but if you Google OWASP Learning Gateway, the project started in, I believe, June or July of last year. So
that's fine. I can look up the rest. The answer is sufficient.
Tobias, I have it on showing as well. I mean, so I agree with Tom that we should vote. I will say, I think since I'm the one who sort of moved to do this, I would just sort of add a caveat, which is I think that the request is disjointed. So on number 6, when we say how will the budget be used, it's for certain things, and then when we ask here, it's like for development of GitHub issues. I personally, so I think that there's some like cleanup, and I think Matt Tesaro, as we move forward with this project, especially as we talk about partnering with O'Reilly and things like that, this starts to get like this is a much bigger deal than just a small test thing. Like we really need to think this through. But at the same time, I really appreciate all the work that Bev and Sean are doing to explore this. And I think I look at this as like seed investment to try to help this project grow almost. And so I still think that we should spend the money. So I motioned, Tom seconded. We've had discussion. I think we should bring it to a vote so that we can talk about the last item and close.
Matt, can you restate the motion?
I move that we grant $6,000 to the mentoring project. Where is the best way to say this? To this OWASP mentor initiative run by Bev Corwin and Sean Orty effectively.
Okay. Now you understand that that's different than what she just talked about, because what she was talking about was the mentor initiative, and that led into the Learning Gateway, and there was BLT talk in there as well.
Yeah, I want to clarify the request was for the mentoring initiative and the mentoring committee. The OWASP Learning Gateway project came out of the mentoring committee. It's related, but it's not what this specifically is.
Right.
This is really the mentor initiative, which we are working with Tiffany to create a committee for that. And the other thing, the O'Reilly, that's an example. We have numerous organizations that are interested in having co-marketing, and
saying we need to wrap our head around it.
An example of many. I've got like 12 or 14 that would like to work with Kelly to do co-marketing agreements and things like that, and offer content and share OWASP content and things like that in the future. So not to confuse, sorry.
So Bev, does it make sense to do just the mentor initiative and not to do the Learning Gateway at this time? Would that be a problem?
Well, I think I don't Well, they're connected. So if you're helping the Mentor Initiative, which I think is a really good thing to do, because we need to get the Mentor Initiative into a committee status at some point. So that would really help supporting the Mentor Initiative. And I think it should be the New York chapter headquarters, since it was really started there. And, you know, Sean and I could help run that. But I really believe that the OWASP Learning Gateway is a much bigger thing, that we've sort of a drop in the bucket of the potential for the learning opportunities, but we're already making lots of success on identifying successful pathways, as Sean mentioned, with lots of participants. We have over 75 people that have participated in the mentoring online and also face-to-face activities that we've been doing so far. So the Learning Gateway, we're basically building that around the Mentoring Initiative activities. So they're connected. So by helping one, you're going to definitely help the other anyway. So does that answer your question?
I think so.
Can you clarify what you mean by headquarters New York?
Well, I believe, wasn't the Mentor Initiative proposal, we started that at the New York chapter and it grew. And now we have over 6 chapters participating. So that's what I meant by, I think in the proposal, I think we mentioned it would be headquartered out of the New York chapter, since that's where it started. It was a local.
I guess I don't know what headquartered means in this context. Does that mean there will be a physical office, or?
Well, no. What it means is when you look at your budgets that you have and your line items and your accounts, the way they're set up, there's not a mentor committee account, right? So we haven't been able to create the mentor committee yet. We've been waiting for over a year to do that. But once the mentor committee is set up, then the money could go in there. But if the mentor committee is not yet set up and there's not an account for it, then it should probably go into the New York budget, because that's what we were thinking. We would, you know, use the money out of the New York budget to continue the activities that we're already doing, and that they've really been supporting. It's been the New York and the New Jersey, and also the Brooklyn, the Long Island, as well as DC and Canada, and there's quite a few chapters that show up at the go-to-meeting sessions that we do, and that show up at the meetings that we do with the Women in AppSec committee, and also at the face-to-face events like AppSec USA. We had a bunch of mentors get together and did a mentor meeting. It was unofficial because we had applied to do it officially, but we weren't accepted, so we just did it unofficially. So, you know, we had a bunch of people get together.
So also,
real quick on the on the New York conversation, since I run the chapter, I think my opinion has always been with OWASP is start locally and grow globally. I think that if the board wants to vote on this, which is there is a motion on the table and we're running out of time, I do think that this should be an OWASP project, and then it could be assisted with our community efforts that are tied to this. So I'm not lobbying for a chapter allocation. I'm saying that this has now grown bigger than a chapter, and it's time to go ahead and make it a global project.
I think since this is part of the Learning Gateway, that it would make sense for the funds to go into that project.
I would like to second that. I don't think it makes sense for the funds to go to any chapter. It should go to the project that is helping run the work.
Okay. And one more question for you, Tiffany. Bev mentioned that it's been a year and they haven't received approval for the committee. Can you give us some insight into why that is?
Yeah, absolutely. So basically, to move forward with the committee, I need 2 things. I need the scope that you're going to have for the committee, and for you to ask to create one. When Bev and I were talking about moving initiatives, all initiatives into the committee structure, she told me that she wanted to wait. So until the June 2nd, the last time we talked about it was an email I sent her on November 22nd telling her that when she's ready to make it a committee, just let me know.
Okay.
Previous to that, there's several emails saying that I need the scope so that we can move forward.
Okay.
On June 2nd, she told me she'd like to go forward, and I have sent her an email today just reminding her that as soon as I get the scope, we'll get it set up.
Okay. So, Matt, I'd like to make a friendly amendment to your motion. I support the $6,000. The amendment would be that $6,000 is allocation to the pending committee for this mentor initiative. And so once the committee is proposed and approved, the $6,000 would be budget allocated for the committee to spend.
That's exactly what my intent was, so I would definitely accept that.
Okay.
I like that too.
I think it's appropriate to call out is this is not in the classic terms of OWASP project. This is not a technical OWASP project, right? So this is an initiative, and it should be treated separately. This is not managed by, say, Matt Tesoro and Claudia. This is not an OWASP project. This is something different.
Yes.
Right, and that's why I said allocate the $6,000 to the committee, not to a specific project, but it would be under the Committee 2.0 guidelines.
So I absolutely agree and accept that friendly amendment. Tom?
Okay,
sounds
this
good.
is
One
Michael.
question?
I think that's... Oh, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, great. Yeah, okay. That was answering something I was going to call out, but I think that's important that we're going to the committee rather than a project because we have existing paths for funding projects. So I think we've kind of addressed that already, which is good.
Would the committee be able to fund the project?
I would think the committee could certainly spin up a project.
According to the OWASP 2.0 rules, and extrapolating from every other set of rules which we use for funding, which have the same basic logic functions, the committee can contribute to anything that they see as meeting the needs of the committee scope.
Great.
So if the scope of the committee is to help with mentoring and the project is a platform to help with mentoring, yes, they would be able to do that.
Excellent. Awesome. Thank you.
This is Bev. I have a little comment I want to make. Originally, we had sent the scope for the mentor initiative to convert it to a committee, and we had the people, we had the 5 people named and a lot of other people that were going to support it. And then it was decided that the Women in AppSec committee had priority, so that was something that Tiffany wanted to work on first. So we kind of put that on the back burner. And in the time that the WIA committee and all that went through, it was like 3 or 4 months later, the scope of the Mentor Initiative Committee or whatever had changed because we started the OWASP Learning Gateway project. And then we sent an email to Tiffany later, I can forward you that, but basically saying, well, now we have the WIA committee open, let's just use the scope that we sent before and get it started on the leaders list. And that's what I meant, that we've been waiting over a year for that. So it's good to know that the clarification that Tiffany, that you've been waiting for us to rescope it, and so we'll do that right away. I was not aware of that. So we'll go ahead and do that and get that to you, and then if we could proceed with getting that set up, that would be great. Thank you.
So sorry to cut you off, Bev. I want to really vote on this now and move on. So I'm glad that you guys are talking about this because sometimes it's hard to do these things via email and so forth. But so we have a motion to provide $6,000 to the mentoring initiative via a committee. When it forms, I think we have some proposed members of the committee in the chat. And I'm just going to do a roll call. Andrew, are you supportive of this?
Yes. Might have dropped. Oh, okay. You're still here. Good.
Tom. Tom Brennan?
So I'm named as a member of the committee, so I'm going to abstain from the vote.
Okay. Josh?
Yes.
Martin?
Shadow vote yes.
Michael.
Yes.
Tobias.
Yes.
And I also am yes, obviously, since I proposed it. So, Sean and Bev, thank you very much for proposing these things and pushing us forward. We will continue to work closely with you to kind of watch this all happen. With that, I want to move out of this budget requests item, even though I'm sure there's a lot more to talk about, to try to deal with the strategic training goal question. Matt, can you explain the issue here?
Yeah, sure. The real short version is that if we couldn't find a vendor who could hold like you would a traditional credit card for room charges at a hotel, let's say, which means we would charge registrants at the time of registration and then have to refund those charges if they attended, with the model being it's free, but we wanted them to have some skin in the game. So if we did that process, we'd end up with 400-ish times 4 refunds going out. Besides the fact that that was a manual and kind of awful process, it also is going to get us flagged with the acquiring banks as a high-risk vendor because we'll have a significant portion of refunds versus purchases. So that's kind of a non-starter. So in lieu of that, we came up with a bunch of different ways to make it sort of cash revenue neutral, even though it might not be a refund of your registration cost directly. And since this was a board-run initiative, the staff had a bunch of ideas, and we thought, you know what, the board proposed this, let's give them the right of refusal or a suggestion on how they'd like us to handle this situation, so a la the list I put up on the agenda.
Hey, Matt, the ISSA Austin chapter does this with Eventbrite, where they do refunds. Now, it's small amounts. It's like $5 or something like that. But did you guys look at Eventbrite? And if so, like, what was the feedback there?
Eventbrite charges the registrant at the time of registration, but they hold sending back the money to the org for 4 to 5 days after the event, so we'd still have the same problem. And Allison, that was what I read online, and Allison called Eventbrite and clarified that was my interpretation was correct. So yeah, Eventbrite's out. And I guess the ISSA Austin just has a crappy credit rating, but they don't care if their money gets held for a long time because they really probably don't make any. If you get what I'm saying.
Yeah.
The 3 or 4 people that paid $25, they don't get that payment for 3 weeks or a month, and it really doesn't matter.
Okay.
But if that happens across all of our income streams, that's really a problem.
Gotcha. Okay.
So I guess, can I just propose that, and Michael, maybe you can weigh in specifically, but it sounds to me like, yes, you should pursue options and we should delegate to you to handle this.
Yeah, no, I'm fine with that. I just, since this was a board thing, I didn't want to just by fiat sort of change not a fundamental, but a reasonable portion of how this is supposed to operationally work.
Yeah, so this is Michael. The intent of this part of the goal was to ensure a high percentage of attendees and to limit drop-offs. So that was more of a tactical item rather than the strategic part of the goal. So keep the spirit of that in mind and charge forward with whatever approach works for you. That's my feedback.
Does anybody on the call on the board object to that approach? Because this seems pretty straight. This seems to me like something, I'm glad you raised it, Matt, but it seems like operationally you can handle it.
I agree with Michael, and I think flexibility is okay.
Yeah, I'm flexible as well. The only thought I had is like, maybe when they show up to the event, you give them validated parking and a certificate to buy something off the OWASP store and, whatever. Figure out how to make that up to them. But I'm happy to let you kind of lead the charge on what that is.
Perfect.
Great. Hearing no objections, Matt, do you feel clear?
Yeah, that's fine. I just wanted to give you guys the opportunity to put comment on it, and it's kind of came up late last week anyway, so the timing was good.
Yep.
I figured, hey, man, if it holds for a week and you guys get to chime in, it's probably better than us just going off. So, yeah, we're good.
Great.
We should just collect bank account numbers for all of them and then refund them when... No, I'm kidding.
Well, sadly enough, like a couple of the vendors we reached out to said, gee, that's a good idea. Maybe we should do that.
Yeah.
So apparently, we're not the first ones to ask.
Tom, do you want to talk about this CREST update? Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you, Matt. Just want to keep us moving.
And
it was covered on email. I just wanted to disclose that. So if anybody had a question, I'm pursuing my goals of driving professionalism in the industry.
Thanks, Tom. I want to add an announcement. I think everybody's seen the email at this point, but I just want to publicly say thank you to Kate, who appears maybe to have left the call, unfortunately.
She had to get in a call with the AMS vendor. She pinged me on Slack.
Kate, for those of you who may not have seen, Kate has decided to move on from OWASP, and so we just wanted to publicly acknowledge her, and we will all miss her, I'm sure. Also,
real quick on that topic before you move on, do we have a transition plan there? Matt, are you handling that? Matt T?
Yeah, that's well in way. We've started documenting all the various and sundry things Kate has access and does, and we're moving those over as quick as we can.
Awesome. All right.
I also have an email that I intended to hit send on this morning that I have not yet, that sort of outlines at least a little bit of that, Josh, just so that people know that there is stuff happening.
Okay. Thank you, Kate.
Great. Well, with that, I guess I'm ready to adjourn the meeting. So I would move that. Do I have a second?
Second.
Yes.
Any objections? Great, thanks. I'm stopping the recording.